Welcome to the Healing Path. I'm Laura Donnelly, founder of the Healing Path Conversation Series and Dancing with Ease Body-Brain Balance. People hire me to teach them to move out of pain and into healing. These conversations with friends and colleagues offer many perspectives on healing. The thing we have in common is the concept that healing begins inside ourselves with the decision to heal, and it expands outward from there. My guest today is Jazmine Russell, and she's going to talk to us about breath work. And I love this. We breathe all the time. And most of the time, our body knows how to breathe. But sometimes we can help it. We can help our breathing. We can help what our body is trying to tell us by changes in our breathing. And I'm going to bring Jazmine into the studio here, and she will tell us all about her journey into holotropic breathwork for emotional release.
Hi.
Hi. I'm so glad that you could join us. And it's like evening where you are, right?
It is. It's about 4 p.m. here. I live near Berlin.
And it's about 9 in the morning for me. And we both have something warm to drink.
Yes, it's tea time.
Which is wonderful. So, okay, what I said is true. We're always breathing, but we don't always pay attention to it. How did you discover the importance? Well, actually, what is holotropic breathwork? Because it
Yes.
sounds whole.
Yes. So holotropic breathwork is a quite special breathwork technique. So people come to breathwork from kind of a lot of different lineages. Some people are familiar with the Wim Hof method. Some people are familiar with pranayama or things like that. Holotropic breathwork, I specifically came to this work, and I think a lot of people do, from the standpoint of wanting to find a practice that really supports them with trauma and emotional healing. And so this style of breathwork is not necessarily something that you're just going to do, as you're going to work or or even necessarily just sitting down and doing it as part of a meditation practice. This is something that takes a little bit longer in terms of an amount of time, but that I find can have really profound healing results. So let me just zoom back and talk a bit about how I came to this work. So I'm a complex trauma survivor, and I also have a chronic illness, an autoimmune disease. And often those who are survivors of trauma have this in common. Trauma impacts not just our mental health, but also our physical being in so many different ways that we don't even understand the complexities of quite yet. And so I also worked for a long time in the mental health system. And I went to school for applied psychology. I did both clinical and research work, and then got out of school and immediately started working with people in crisis. So working with children and families who were coming in and out of the inpatient unit. And to make a long story short, not only was that job for me quite unsustainable and really challenging at so many different levels, but it also clued me in even more so than I already was to the total failures and deficiencies of traditional mental health systems. And there are a lot of people in those fields doing great work. It's not to diminish the work that people are doing, and we need great social workers and great psychologists and psychiatrists. But the system itself is really set up in a way that so many people fall through the cracks and don't get anywhere near the help that they actually need. And what I found was that we were really individualizing or personalizing mental health problems that were actually systemic and were actually the results of complex trauma. And we weren't really addressing this trauma in any real, tangible way. And so I had my own mental breakdown after, trying to do this work for so long, and, my own trauma history reemerging, and the undiagnosed autoimmune disease that I had. All of these things led to me having a total breakdown. And I was searching for things. I knew that I wanted to go a non-traditional route, because I had such a distrust of the system, having worked inside of it. And somehow, some way, I wound up at a group breathwork workshop. I believe the first one I ever attended was with Erin Telford, who was my teacher and mentor in holotropic breathwork as well later on. And in this group, it was the first time you sit in a circle with a bunch of other people, you lie down, you breathe to music. And it's a very specific breath pattern, and a specific breath pattern that elicits essentially a light altered state of consciousness. So, a very, very deep meditation, so to speak. You have to be lying down with your eyes closed. This is not the kind of breath work that you can do while you're driving or anything like that. Um, but it puts your nervous system into a state of such deep and total relaxation that when you're in this light altered state, a lot of the stuff that was, just kind of held on in your body, or, suppressed for a long time, or different things, both somatic and psychological, can reemerge, but in a very safe way, in a way that, your nervous system itself is quite at ease, that these things bubble up to the surface and they come out. And also, these spaces are usually ones that are very welcoming to all kinds of expressions. So we make sounds and we yell and we scream and we cry and we laugh and all of those things. And I know it might sound scary to some, but for me, having lived in New York City at that time, and there are just no spaces. There's a lot of expression going on, in big cities like New York City, but there aren't a lot of spaces where we get to do that intentionally. I mean, what spaces do we have to be able to feel the extent of our feelings and to yell and scream in a supportive group? Not very many. I think the world would be a much healthier place if we did, right? So so that's where I found myself, and I practiced holotropic breathwork for quite a long time. I want to say that the lineage of holotropic breathwork, breathwork in general, using breath for the support of healing, is deeply ancestral for all of us. All, ancient communities all over the world use breath as a form of healing in different capacities. So this is not like a new method. This is not something that can be attributed to, one person. But this particular style of breathing was repopularized in the 1970s by Stan and Christina Groff, who were looking for ways to help people reach an altered state without using psychedelics. And I love psychedelics. Psychedelics are great. A lot of people use them as well. But they wanted to find something also where, and for me, I believe this is particularly effective for trauma survivors because we need a sense of control and agency that you don't necessarily get when you're, doing some type of substance or other methodology that, it's kind of like you get what you get or you get thrown thrown into it. With breathwork, you have a lot of control. You have a lot of control to set your own space and place and timing and rhythm and all of it, to kind of choose how far you're willing to go or not. And I find that particularly beautiful. So that's just a bit about the practice.
It's wonderful, and the thing that that I love, and one of the reasons I wanted to have a conversation with you on the healing path is that, well, one, we're breathing until we die. When we're not breathing anymore, we aren't living anymore. And breathing is moving. And so a lot of what I do is about moving. And one of the things I've been thinking about when I, this is old, but I have a picture of myself, as a kid, and it's at the social event that happened after my dad's funeral. And I'm standing there and somebody caught my picture. I don't know what happened, but I turned my head and I was like, and so for me, not breathing is a sign that I'm in some kind of not good place. also changes in my breathing, give me an alert that something's going on that I'm not necessarily paying attention to here and now. And that if I have time and I go paying attention to that, then my breathing goes back to a more natural rhythm. And the point that you said that's really important for me is I believe that the healing journey is each person's journey. I don't know what somebody else needs. And choice, the work I do is very gentle, and this is probably very gentle, but powerful. The process is gentle, the results are powerful. And if I would guess if somebody's in the middle of a session and they get overwhelmed, there's a person there supporting them who can help them say, cool, you don't have to go any further yet. And when it's time, the body and the breath will release the next level of information that the whole of us needs for healing.
Exactly.
And I can get that you can't do it while driving.
Yes, do not do while driving. No, but I love what you said about the breath, and it reminded me of holding patterns. So we all have holding patterns in our body, places where we tense up, where we tend to hold particular tension and stress and even emotions. And so there's breath holding patterns where those of us who have undergone chronic stress, pain, trauma, especially complex trauma for ongoing periods of time, we develop these holding patterns as coping strategies, and to be honest, quite wise coping strategies, right? When you're holding your breath, when you're squeezing your diaphragm unintentionally, it's not letting some of the distress come through. It's kind of holding it down and in. And it's kind of like dissociation in the sense where it is quite adaptive, because there are moments where we are not able to feel the extent of that emotion or that pain or that stress. And so we don't have to pathologize our bodies for that. And also, if we don't get the moment of the release or the kind of completion of the process, or moments where we are in a context where we feel like it is finally safe to let that breath go, to ease that holding pattern a bit, that's where kind of chronic long-term stuff comes in, especially chronic pain and illness and things like that. So yeah, we need those places to be able to let it go. And I love that you said movement and breath, because I see it exactly like that, both with physical movement and with breath, which both are always intertwined. It allows for a movement of emotions to come through. And I think we live in a world or a society where we are quite terrified and don't have the supports that we actually need to feel some of our emotions, or kind of the extent of our emotions. Now, I'm not saying we should just walk around all day just, being totally unbridled in our emotions. It's not like that. But we live in such fear and shame around them. That we need spaces like this to be able to allow it to move through. And it doesn't feel good at first, but it can. It absolutely can. There's that I call it the post breathwork glow, where you've moved so much breath and emotion and energy, and you just feel like yourself again, or like just clear, and you can just experience the world with a bit more freshness and aliveness afterwards. Yeah.
It's really powerful, and it's funny how you were in New York. I was in New York when I first started working with the Alexander technique, which is one of the okay, there's several things. You have a huge body of knowledge in many areas that supports how you do the breath work. So this makes your individual approach even if you teach all the same holotropic breathwork processes that you learned, you're coming from your place and your foundation, which adds a different energy and nuance to the material, and your experience going through it gives you, well, I would say, like signposts on the journey. People you work with won't have exactly the same experiences necessarily, but there's just generally there's beginning, a middle, and a completion of a process. And then in my work, then there's like yes, and then there's the next layer, and you can go as deep as you want because your body has been with you in this life for every event. And I sort of feel like, I don't sort of feel like, I feel like everything we experience is stored in our cells. And it influences how our muscles work. It influences how we breathe. It influences how we think. And so then that influences what we look at. And when my breath is soft and relaxed, I have a bigger view. Even if I do this, I can feel my breath tighten because I'm tensing and narrowing. And so then when I think, oh well, what if I didn't do that? So my big question for you is, you made radical changes in your life, which took tremendous courage. Moving to another country, working in a different language, leaving, and see, and this is the other thing that's so important, I think, you'll have to confirm, is that as you did this work, you realized that you learned a great deal on this other path, but this was not the path to stay on.
Yeah.
And so many times people say, well, I invested so much money in this path, or took me so long to get out of school, I can't give up. And I'm like, you have it. You have it. You have the knowledge. You did that path. You thought it was going somewhere. And in your case, you described that it was really taking you down into unhealthiness and disease for your body, and reawakening all the trauma by trying to do your job and help people. And so then, like, oh my gosh, you must have been kind of like at, oh no, what the heck am I going to do? Did you have that?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, some of us, our bodies will not allow us to live for too long out of integrity. Um, and I'm grateful now to all my body's warning signs. I definitely wish that I was able to tune in and listen to it a little bit sooner. Because I mean, truly, I was on a path to total dissolution. I mean, my body was breaking down in every possible way. And telling me it's time to do something else. And we all have choices and decisions to make, but to me, it really didn't feel like like a choice or a decision. It was just that you cannot keep going down this path any longer. If you do, you will probably die, is the message that I got from my body. I mean, I was so, so chronically ill. And I was terrified, of course, because I had no idea what was going to come next, what I was going to do next. I knew I still had a deep vested interest in mental health, and I still do. I'm now at the Berlin School of Mind and Brain, doing like neuropsychology and research in that field. But for a long time, actually in between then and now, I worked with other psychiatrists, psychologists, researchers, artists, activists, people with lived experience, healers from all over who were interested in doing things differently. And together, we started 8 years ago the Institute for the Development of Human Arts, which is a transformative mental health training institute. And we uplift multiple modalities and frameworks and ways of thinking about mental health, and really try to complicate the narrative around mental health, because The way that things are going right now, traditional systems really aren't working for most people. And I never would have had the chance to be part of incredible communities like that and found this organization if I hadn't, listened and believed and trusted that there was something better and something different for me. Um, and yeah, I think that sense of trust is the crucial part. I didn't have it back then. It was just kind of like hands in the air. We're on this roller coaster. There's no other option. Like, this is what we're doing, questioning it every step of the way. But now, more than a decade later, I have so much trust in my body, in my emotions. Doesn't matter what the valence is, if it feels good, if it doesn't feel good, I trust it. I trust my discomfort. I trust my pain. I trust the messages that my body is giving me. I don't trust what my mind has to say about it necessarily, right? But I trust my body. And I still do breath work nearly every single week for my own practice, not just with clients, because that is the number one way that I get in touch with what my body has to tell me.
And are you able to do this work online with somebody, with a client? How does that work? Because a lot of times people think, oh, well, this is a wonderful modality, and like where I live is the middle of Kansas, and they can say, oh, yeah, there's nobody here who knows this, who practices. How can I deal with this?
Oh, yeah.
Or
I've had clients all over the world. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that, actually, COVID really changed a lot of this for us. But even before then, we were going in a direction of doing a lot online. And I do, of course, naturally love to be in person with people. I just did a breathwork workshop when I flew to New York a couple weeks ago to do breathwork. One of my clients owns a salt cave. Oh, it's a beautiful space. And so I did a workshop there, and that was my first one in person with 20 people in ages, like since before COVID. So it was so heartwarming and it was great. And when we can meet in person and gather in person, that's awesome. But I find, especially for group sessions too, but especially for one-on-one sessions, there's something really special about being able to do breath work in your own home, in your own bed, setting your space, lighting a candle, and having your facilitator there with you, but not necessarily in person. It is just as effective, and if not, even just makes people feel even more comfortable because they're in their own kind of, homey, cozy context. So I think breathwork online works really, really well. And when we can do it together in a community, that's also truly beautiful.
It's also, it gives the opportunity for people where they are to access the work the way they need to work it.
Yeah.
I learned both my primary modalities, movement fundamentals, which is it's a body-based system, and the Alexander technique, which really involves the idea that what you think changes how your body moves and responds. And I learned both of these in a group class. But I came from the performing world, and that's a different place. You learn in groups all the time. You goof up in front of people all the time. And I have found that there's a lot of people who really need to start to open this box, because it feels like a very scary box. It feels like Pandora's box, I think, when you start a deep healing journey with your body. And it's you have this sensation that I'm going to open the lid and things are going to come out that I can't control, that I can't put back in the box, that I can't fix. But at the same time, as you mentioned, how your story went, well, really, your life pulled the lid off the box.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's what happens, we don't get to open the box. We don't get to peek the little lid off, and see what's in there. Sometimes we have an accident. We have some critical situation that breaks the lid off the box. And for some people, they need to start in a really small, safe environment that's just them and a trusted person
Yeah.
and not to do the journey for them, but really to just hold a little lantern that says you're not alone. You're not alone in the dark. There is a path. This does go somewhere. I promise you, this does go somewhere.
Mhm.
And it goes somewhere good. And then you hold. I'm sure you hold. It might be through a lot of mud on the way, but it's okay because it's going to end up somewhere good.
Yeah.
And the other thing about doing something in someone's house, their house is where they live. Their house both supports them and nurtures them and reinforces old patterns. So if they go somewhere to a therapy appointment, a workshop, a class, a one-on-one training, often that new environment, they can feel like, well, I can do this here, but when I go home, I have to be my old self.
Mhm.
And so then to start this work in the place where they live, oh yeah, we live in our bodies. Sorry. You really can't do this where you don't live.
Mhm.
So I think that that's very beautiful. So that, uh, and what you said is true too. That there is no replacement for one-on-one, but there is. I have found with the work I do a kind of, I'm going to say, well, video makes it almost like you're sitting in the same room having coffee. It's just that if I would open my window, the sun would be shining instead of the evening in your window.
Yeah.
But they hear your voice, they hear the tone of your voice. You can be present in a slightly different way, but like you also said, there's a degree of safety because they are still autonomous, which in situations of trauma is often really important to maintain a sense of autonomy, even if I'm going to do something new and I have no idea where it's going and I feel like I'm out of control. If I have the sense of autonomy, I'm going to take the next step myself.
Mhm.
That's very different than somebody standing behind you pushing you to take the next 4 or 5 steps.
Yeah. Sometimes we need that intimacy, that depth with one person. Um, for some people, it might even be the first time that they really feel that they can break down in front of someone and that it's okay. And that they don't have to hold on in the way that they've been holding on, and to get to do that work, I feel so, so honored. It brings up a quick story for me where I had a client for about, God, I think we worked together for about a year at that point, and um, each time, I do encourage people, if they desire, at their own pace, in their own way, to make a sound. A scream, a yell, a howl, whatever it is, make a sound. Sound is really powerful to get some stuff moving. Um, and, she was always like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. That's okay. That's totally fine. Just keep breathing. And so we did this for a year, and then she was one who came to a group workshop with me, with other people in person, and we did all this great work over, a year or so together, that then in the group workshop, in the sharing part after, she was like, "Jasmine, I finally yelled because everyone else was yelling. It gave me permission. I could finally feel it and let it come through." And so, yeah, they're just different. Whatever our starting point is, that's where it is. Ultimately, I think eventually we do all need community. We do all need that encouragement and that space to feel like we can be seen and held exactly where we are, by one person and hopefully by many. in a group setting. So, and that's the part that I think we're really missing here. That's the part that traditional mental health systems, I think, also really bypass and don't give us is spaces to be in community. I mean, everything is kind of replaced with, your practitioner, like, oh, save that for your therapist. Don't talk to your friends about it. I mean, of course, you don't want to break boundaries or anything like that, but I don't know. We've gotten so far away from that community aspect that I do find that it's quite essential. But whatever we need, whatever we can do in the moment, we all come to this work from many different places. So making it as accessible as possible is really important to me.
That's very powerfully true. Making it accessible, and giving everyone the opportunities to start where they are, because we can't be anywhere else besides where we are.
Yeah.
But many times people think, well, I have to fix this before I can do that, or I have to
Mm.
solve this problem before I can go to a deeper problem, and really, um, everything is connected through our body, through our experience, and if you just in the work I do, I talk about ease, and if you just allow a little ease one place, your whole body is a little bit easier. So you allow a little breath one place, your whole body has a little bit more oxygen. I can't just breathe into my ear, and allow all the oxygen to go to my ear. No, I breathe in and my whole body is a little bit more oxygenated. I let go of a little bit of tensing, and my whole body let go of a little bit of tensing.
Mhm.
And the thing you talked about community, when you have a community of people practicing together, this is different than, playing volleyball together. Uh, but if they're practicing something like this, the energy of everyone's practice compounds the ability for the people who are ready to make the next step. They have that energy to use, like your client who felt safe for the first time making sound because other people were making sound. And probably then on her own, by herself, in another breathwork session, she would be able to make sound because we take that and use it in our next I call it kind of unraveling.
Mhm.
So can I ask you what have things changed in your body? Has the impact of having um, did you say an immune disorder
Mhm.
changed as you have continued to do the breath work and make the mm, resulting changes in your life that were clear, changes in job, changes in how you approach work and things like that? Have you noticed changes in this other, because traditional medicine just says, okay, well, you have an immune disorder, you probably have this the rest of your life, get used to it.
Right. Yeah, no, I've noticed profound changes with breath work on every level. I find breath work so interesting from that place because there are some modalities that work mostly or just with the body, some that work mostly or just, on mental kind of cognitive processing, and some that work just or mostly on this kind of like spiritual domain. And breath work in such an interesting, weird way cuts across all of those. There are thoughts that are coming through, but they can pass on through much quicker, and you can draw from a whole different pool of insight or thinking. But also people can describe it sometimes as accessing um, spiritual elements that they haven't been able to before, like really interesting things, talking to ancestors, other things coming through, being able to put things together in a way that feels really spiritually meaningful and rewarding, feeling bliss states. And then at the same time, this physical healing. I had someone in my last workshop who actually had one lung removed only a couple, I think, weeks, months before this workshop. And I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I'm not sure if you should be here. Like, I mean, of course, like breathing, but this is a really intensive breathing process. It's not for everyone in every moment or stage. But she did it. She was incredible. And at the end of it, she said, I've had this pain in the back of my heart and lung for a long time. And then, post surgery, it got worse. And since I started the breath pattern, and even now afterwards, it is completely gone. It is totally gone. I don't know where it went. And and so I've seen so many clients experience things like that, and I myself have too. So I'm not a believer that, this autoimmune disease that I have is with me for the rest of my life. I've been through ups and downs with it, but breathwork has given me a whole different way of communicating with my body. I will get insights into what my body needs in different moments. I will be able to, it sometimes feels like almost pulling out this density or, stickiness or something in a certain part of my body and letting it go. And it changes so much. I have healed that autoimmune disease, so I have celiac disease, and it hasn't been straightforward. I would never tell this story by saying, "Yeah, I did breath work, and then everything was fine." It's not like that at all. But through the ups and downs, I have healed from celiac to a greater extent than I thought possible at the beginning, because I didn't find out that I had celiac disease until I was like 23 or so. So I had 23 years of living with this disease, for so much kind of dysfunction and other things to go awry. But one of the most powerful things, I'll kind of end with this point, that on this topic, that so celiac disease really impacts a lot of different things. It can cause brain inflammation. It can cause, so much other dysfunction. Typically, it's only associated with the stomach, but it's definitely does not only impact the stomach. However, that is an area that I also had a lot of pain and tension and caused, SIBO, small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, all these other things. And I kept trying to find ways to soothe my stomach, right? So, because going gluten-free, having a gluten-free diet did not, the medical establishment is like, just go gluten-free, you'll be fine. That's also not how it works. I went gluten-free and things were better, but not totally fine. And so I still had all this pain in my stomach whenever I would eat anything. And I spent so much time thinking, how can I soothe this? How can I ease this? How can I, kind of like, I had a hiatal hernia because of all this. So it was like, how can I make that, part of my stomach go back down through my diaphragm to not be pushing up, through my diaphragm, causing this hernia? And something came to me where I suddenly realized through breath work that it wasn't that I needed to soothe or ease or, push it down. Something wanted to come up. Something wanted to, like, there's all this energy pushing up and out. There was so much anger that I had that I was carrying in my stomach that I was not letting out. And finally, through this breathwork practice, allowed, that raw, sacred anger and rage to come up and out. And something completely changed for me after that. I mean, it was just healing on a whole other level. So that's also what I mean a bit about trusting the body. It's like it's counterintuitive. We think, no, I need to soothe this, or I need to, kind of do the opposite of what it's trying to do. But sometimes the body is trying to do something, and we just need to, we just need to let it do its thing. Get out of our own way.
Right, right. No, that's powerful. That is really powerful. And it was by focusing on the breath that you got the information about what the other part of your body needed to do. The work I do, it's called indirect action, which is what you just described, is that you worked on the breath and then other things happened. But when you focused on your stomach, it didn't change. And so
Yeah.
a lot of times when we go at the problem pushes back. That's where,
Yes.
like dancing, if you want to jump high, you push down hard. And so,
Mhm.
yeah, then and the floor throws me in. So if I hate this thing and I push on it, then it pushes back.
Mhm.
But if I just say, I really don't like this, that's okay. It's okay not to like something, you know, and then go to what's working better for you. The breathing was working, even when the stomach was not working so good. The breathing was working.
Yeah.
But that created an atmosphere in your body of overall healing. And then you were open and and curious. And what else do I want to say? Allowing. There's a lot of allowing
Mhm.
in healing that I think I think is challenging. We can think, well, I want to fix this, but I don't want this to happen. Yeah, maybe that's not my choice.
Mhm.
Maybe
Truly.
maybe I gotta let something go. If I want to heal this thing, maybe I have to let something else go that I've been holding on to. And
It's a lot of allowing, a lot of surrender. And, it's funny in breath work, inevitably, resistance comes up. I've been doing this for so long, and resistance every time still comes up at the beginning. It's like, maybe I should go make dinner instead. Maybe I don't want to do this. Maybe I shouldn't, maybe not today. Whatever it might be, resistance comes up for everyone. And we don't have to make ourselves feel bad about the resistance. Oh my God, why am I not allowing? Why am I not surrendering? Why am I, any of that stuff? Because it just is, it stacks. It's resistance on resistance on resistance. And so instead, I always encourage people to, okay, well, what does the resistance feel like? Like, let's tune into that. If we can't tap into the surrender, or we can't tap into whatever it is that we think we know that we want to release in that moment, I'm having trouble tapping into the sadness or the anger, the pain, or the whatever, because I just don't want to. It's just so frustrating. Why can't it just go away? Well, okay, like you said, start where we are. If that resistance is coming up, all right, what does that feel like in your body? And then be with that for a minute. Obviously, it wants your attention. So, let's roll with it. Let's give it your attention, just for a minute. So, yeah, I think that's a big piece of breath work, is like we don't really surrender by just going, okay, I'm going to surrender now. Right? It's a practice. It's a process, of being willing to stand with yourself in every moment, not fighting against yourself, whatever the emotion is.
that's a beautiful, beautiful place for us to pause, because I have a feeling we could talk all day,
Yes.
all night, from where you are. Because for me, healing is like going down a path, and I don't know what's going to come up. But
Mhm.
if I go with the idea that this is an adventure, a wonderful adventure, and what's going to happen around this corner is very, very different than if I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what's going to happen. This is going to be terrible. We don't really know. We don't really know. And I think that's the purpose of a guide, is to say it's okay not to know.
Yeah.
And I loved what you said about trust. Is there anything else? I have your website here. People can visit your website, contact you. They can connect with you on Instagram. I'll put that one up again too, because some people really like Instagram. And any final thing you want to share, or and if we decide we have another nuance to talking about breath work and change and growth, we can come back another time. I'm happy to do that.
Absolutely. Oh, I would love to. Yeah, the other place that you can find me is on the Depth Work podcast. It's called Depth Work, a holistic mental health podcast. My by far most popular episode, that has, I think, thousands and thousands of listens at this point, is the holotropic breathwork one that I did. So if you want to find out more about that, yeah, a lot of that information is on the podcast as well. And for anyone that wants to stay in touch, I have a mailing list, and soon, in the next couple of weeks, I will be putting out a free 15-minute breathwork practice. So that's something that people can do at home. Again, making things accessible. So yeah, that'll be out soon. And those are my main modes of communication with folks, the email list, the podcast, and folks can always reach out to me by email or on Instagram too.
Thank you so much, Jazmine. I really appreciate your time, and this has just been a delightful conversation.
Yes, thank you, Laura. You were such a joy to talk to.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.